I have a memory, stored in the back of my mind, of being about 7 or 8 years old and spending my days learning times tables, reading books, and learning how to spell words like telescope or together. Waiting for the moment where my classmates and I would go line up in the hallway and go down to a classroom, where we'd sit on a brightly colored rug and look around the room at all of the different things that would make noise. Singing songs like Three Blind Mice and Row, Row, Row Your Boat. Some of you may have a similar memory. The music classroom was always an open and welcome space for me. That's why I became a music teacher. Making music a part of my life was never a question, and I've always wanted to provide that experience for others. Today, making music is the most accessible it has ever been. With technology like video calls, social media, and online music platforms, people can make and share music with each other all over the world. So if that were true, this would be a room full of musicians, right? I mean, music is taught in the public schools K through 12. Until around middle school, most districts require at least a general music class. There are even some colleges, ours included, that require some sort of art or music gen ed. Not to mention the tens and thousands of people who listen to music on a daily basis. But when you leave school, something changes. You have to plan your own day. No more classrooms or school functions. Music becomes less of an active skill and more just passive enjoyment. And there's the problem. The way music is taught in schools makes it exclusive to the academic setting. And if you want to continue engaging with music after school, you either stay in the academic field, or it becomes something for only those with the privilege to do so. Music becomes something for only those with the privilege to do so. Getting together with another group of musicians becomes slightly more exclusive. Groups like bands, choirs, and orchestras become something for serious musicians, and it becomes harder and harder to do. The amount of people who have told me that they wish they still did music is amazing. So throughout my musical upbringing, I began asking myself a question. Why is it that band, choirs, and orchestras are the only ways we teach students to engage with music growing up? To address this question, I began looking at the public school music curriculum. As a public school educator, I have a series of standards that I have to meet. And if I were to list them all for you here today, we'd be here all night. But there are about four standards four large standards that these smaller standards all stem from. Creating, performing, presenting, and producing, responding, and connecting. Now, these are all pretty self-explanatory. Creating means to create something from where there wasn't before. Responding means to take a piece of music you were either listening to, playing, or analyzing and respond to it. And connecting means to take that piece of music that you were either listening to, playing, or analyzing and connect it to another subject or to the world outside of music. Now, performing, presenting, and analyzing performing, presenting, and producing rather, happen to be where music education usually centers on. We spend our class time in ensembles polishing and practicing pieces of music to present to the community or to our friends and family. We're taught to not make mistakes and play what's on the page. Our classroom, the class curriculum is dictated by the pieces we choose to perform. Then there are supplementary classes that support this program, like jazz bands, marching bands, show choirs, etc. Yet, these are not the only ways that this can be taught. The model does work. This allows music teachers to reach a large quantity of the student body and provide positive musical experiences for the students involved. It teaches things like music literacy, playing with others, and a litany of other skills. Non-musical skills are also addressed through this model. Things like problem solving, goal setting, and time management, to name a few. And it's provided some of the best musicians that America has seen. People like Miles Davis, Yo-Yo Ma, and Lady Gaga all came from school music programs. However, This one way of teaching music isn't the only way, and frankly, it isn't always the best way either. If we were to look at all of the successful musicians that came out of just this country over the last century, there would be a portion of those musicians that never learned how to read music, not coming up through traditional programs. The great guitar player Jimi Hendrix comes to mind. Jimi Hendrix, a Clarksville native actually, never ended up coming through a school music program, learning to play by listening and experiencing it. He spent 4 years as a professional musician touring and playing, and is now considered one of the most influential figures in the history of rock music ever. Successful musician, no? There's another musician, Ray Charles, who grew up blind, never being in a school music program, yet became this incredible successful musician, learning and experiencing things through different methods, some from the jazz standards and some from other cultural musical traditions. As I said, this program works, but evidence shows us that it's not the only way. This model is built for a very specific student and can sometimes leave out some things. It can leave out some students that may not want to play a band or orchestra instrument, maybe like guitar, or something more culturally specific like Appalachian fiddle or congas from Latin America. It creates a great cultural disparity between the pieces we choose to perform and our diverse student body, as most of the pieces that are available and have been written are written and have been written by white men. And this model is mainly teacher-centered. Now, that's not a bad thing, but COVID taught us that when the music teacher isn't in front of the students planning performances, picking the pieces, and really motivating students, many students had trouble engaging with music on their own. So why not expand our perspective and bring in practices from other cultures that have also been learning and interacting with music over the centuries? People like, this is what makes these popular musicians so successful. As I said, people like Miles Davis and Lady Gaga all came from public school music programs. However, they were able to interact with the music that they found important and made it their own. It's time for music educators to bring these perspectives into their classrooms. I believe this can be done by looking outside the Western European tradition for new perspectives. Not all students resonate with this tradition, and that's totally fine. There is such a large world of music out there, and we only have the opportunity to explore it. The jazz tradition comes to mind as another useful approach to teaching music. With the diverse student population that we have, the jazz tradition provides a little bit more of a cultural opening for students that they may not get elsewhere. And it also approaches music from a different perspective from the Western European tradition. The jazz tradition focuses a little bit more on training the musical ear and listening first. Students are asked to be a little bit more independent and start improvising and listening first versus reading first, as in the Western European tradition. This improvisation really pushes students to be more independent, and playing everything on the page isn't enforced as heavily. Students are asked to interpret and come up with their own solutions. This also leads very well into student-led learning. A student in this model would provide a musician, or would produce a musician that is more confident in their own sound, more willing to take risks, and to be more independent. Students would leave a program with this model with the ability to play and make music wherever they are. I believe this can also be done by expanding the school music program to include more opportunities for informal performances. This way is the way most bands and musicians tour nowadays. If we were to include this with students early on, some may continue playing until later in life. And lastly, I believe this can be done by meeting our students where they are, not where we wish they would be. Students are a lot smarter nowadays than we give them credit for. And teachers are also not the end-all be-all for information. The internet saw to that. We are more guides now than ever before, and our job is now to point students in the direction of the knowledge they seek. If we were to spend time in our classrooms really getting to know what our students want to learn, then maybe our classrooms would continue to be more relevant and engaging. It's time for music education to expand its worldview because the world is growing, and we should continue to grow with it. Thank you.